So we have already shown over there the present words. They should be equivalent. Okay, so here we are talking about present words. So present words is just we have all the net cash flows, and we bring all the net cash flows to the present time. And if the present value is greater than 0, we'll accept the project. If it's less than 0, then we will reject the project. Of course, again, it's at a certain interest rate. Okay, so originally we were looking at benefit and cost. Now we look at net cash flows, and we bring them to the present time and compute their present value, and we'll get the value for making decision. Before that, usually we'll go through a screening process. It's about payback period. Screening process doesn't mean that it's the decision rule. It's just like previously we said, oh, the cost cannot be too high. Effectiveness has to be higher than a certain value. Payback period says that if the project, our investment cannot return within certain time, then we won't do it. It's because of the risk. Future is always unknown. If you want to take the risk, at least you need to try to manage your risk. And future is really very difficult to predict. Even if in the long run, maybe after 10 years, our investment will still generate revenue and profit. But in 10 years, anything could happen, then we cannot do it. If you go to some place for investment, and for example, if the geopolitical situation is not very stable, you probably won't do long-term investment. You'll say that, okay, I think within the 5 years, it's quite okay. So let's get our investment back in 3 years. And if we can sustain more than that, then we are making more profit. And evaluate based on 2 years. Okay. So payback period is commonly used in many industries. Other companies have their payback period. For different industries, because of different risk factors, they will set different payback period. The riskier it is, the shorter payback period they will set. If it's very safe, they are willing to do it for more than 10 years. Their investment, but just imagine that you invest something there, and you can only get your investment back after 10 years. It has to be very stable. Payback period is very intuitive, very easy to compute. But the problem is it will not consider the cash flow happens after the payback period. So if there's a project being rejected because the payback period is too long, however, the project in the long run could be extremely profitable, but you won't look at the part beyond the payback period. That's the drawback of payback period. And for payback period, one way to do it is just to add the value up to see. In the beginning, you have some investment, and you will return. A very brute force way will be you just add the return until the time that the overall, the net cash flow becomes greater than 0. Then you say that is your payback period. For example, here, your investment is over there, and that's the plus. Negative part is your investment. Others are your return. So you look at them one by one, add them together. meaning that computing the cumulative flow. Okay. Until this point, the end of the fourth year it becomes positive. So somewhere between the third year and the fourth year, the cash flow turns from negative to the cumulative cash flow turns from negative to positive, which means that the payback period is somewhere between the third year and the fourth year. It's 3 some years. Okay, so you can compute using sometimes it's just simple interpolation. So this is 0. Originally, you invested some amount of money, then after 1 year you get some money back. After some year, another year you get some back. The third year, the end of fourth year it becomes positive. Right? Positive. So it happens somewhere in between. Use simple linear interpolation, you get 3.2. This is a rough way to compute that. This is without considering discounted value, right? Because cash flow happen in the future. If we want to see whether or not they contribute to the recovery of investment, they should be discounted to the present time. So there's also another way, which is called discounted payback period. So invested a certain amount of money, and this return, although you get that amount of money back, but this value over one period will accrue certain interest. So your return is not as much as you see, because there's your investment out there. There should be a opportunity cost, the interest there, right? That's one way to think of it. So basically, you follow this principle to compute. Or if you want to, and you see that it's between the fourth and the fifth period. Where is it? Okay, it's the fourth period and the fifth period. It turns from negative to positive, and over there, the way there are many ways that you can do it, but this is one way. Right? If you look at it, you know that you get 15,000, but in fact, your investment should accrue this kind. You need to pay this kind of interest because the money that you did not, you cannot assume that there's no cost. So this is one way to look at it. So you add it up, and you found out that after one period, in fact, you are still having this amount of money invested. Then use that as the remaining balance of new principal multiplied by 15%, you get another interest, and you have some return and so on. You sort of accumulate that. Similarly, accumulate that until it turns positive. So again, it's somewhere between these two. So chances are it's about 4.2, 4 some years. Okay. And once you screen them, after that, then what you are doing, then for the project which you have selected, meaning that they have passed the screening process of payback period, then you can still do this net present worth analysis. And again, the decision rule will be if the present worth of the net cash flow at a certain interest rate is greater than 0, then we'll accept it. Otherwise, we'll reject it. Okay, but the I is very important. As I said, with different I, we may come to different conclusions. I think there's an example. Okay, this one. Okay, yeah. So here, again, we have inflow, we have outflow, and this is our net cash flow. And we drew them on the cash flow diagram, and we can compute inflow and outflow, or we can just add them together. Okay. We have inflow, outflow, and clearly inflow is greater than outflow, meaning that benefit is greater than cost. So it's greater than 0, so we accept. That's based on interest rate of 15%. Okay. Maybe at this point, I will ask, if the interest rate gets higher, let's just say this interest rate that we use becomes 20%, or this interest rate becomes 10%. Which one may turn this option from accepting to rejection? If those are not precise numbers. I'm just saying that if we make it 20% or 10%, which one has the possibility of making this originally acceptable project becoming unacceptable? 20. Okay. Do you want to explain a little bit share a little bit on why you think that it should be 20?
Okay, so whatever the interest rate is, it won't affect the present value of the initial outflow. But it will affect the inflows after that. And the larger the interest rate, the smaller the present value of the future inflows.
Okay. So your observation is based on the diagram, which is good, and your statement is good, but partially right. Okay, but that's the right observation, because we discount everything back to the present time, and when the interest is bigger, then chances are we discount them back, the value will be smaller, and we may reject them. Right? So that part is right, but overall, still need to emphasize that since right now we discounted them back, they are already positive. So chances are there are more opportunities, meaning that the positive part still play greater role. But then you increase the interest rate, the positive part, the positive role of the inflow will be decreased. Not necessarily based on this case, but based on the overall situation. The inflow part, the influence of inflow part may be decreased, so that it may turn from positive to negative, because they discounted back, the value will be smaller. The negative value will be smaller. But originally, if the inflow it has better result, it seems that the influence will get smaller. Okay. Another view, yes?
Maybe if you have like a bigger interest, those values will be higher.
Okay. The value will be higher if you look at it towards the future. Yeah. But when you discounted them back, the influence will be take out even more. Right? You accumulate, so the value that you see in the future when the interest rate is bigger, then when you discount it back, then you take away those interests, so the value will be lower. Another way to look at it is, I think of this. Another way to look at this is when we say 15% here. In fact, when we are talking about present worth, another way to look at why we do this stability it is basically telling us that if we put 15%, meaning that we consider the investment environment in this project, whether or not it will be greater than 50% or not. Okay, so investment return, I'm not saying the interest rate, right? Whether or not investment return will be greater than 50%. It will be, the result will be positive. Okay, so if it's getting bigger and bigger, it will reach a point where the investment result we may not be able to reach, so it will become negative. Let me show you the next slide. So if we change I, as some of you have already pointed out that originally we used 15% is positive, and 60% is still positive. When we reach 17.45, it becomes 0. And as it increases, continue to increase, it becomes negative, all negative.
I think this rate of interest that makes the present world equal to 0 as a name. I don't remember what was that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. So this point, what makes the present value equal to 0 is exactly the interest rate of the rate of return. The rate of return. Meaning that if you want to characterize this opportunity based on something called rate of return. Rate of return. It is to make the net cash flow equal to 0. Meaning that rate exactly captures the return of the investment. If we use 15% to assess whether or not we want to accept the project, meaning that we want to see if we use 15%, whether or not we will make even more than 15%. So the positive part indicates that it will be greater than 15% because here exactly the rate of return is 17.7%. So your return is in fact higher than 15%. Again, there are different ways to look at the value. I'm just trying to give you some intuition, right? When you have NPV, a present worth greater than 0, if you continue to increase the rate that you use, you may turn it from positive to negative. Because if it's positive right now, meaning that your rate of return should be higher than that. So you should be making money, right? You should be able to make money out of this investment because your rate of return, your return on investment will be higher than 15%. So that if you use 15% to assess the value, it will be greater than 0. Because if you put the rate of return in the equation, it will give you present worth equal to 0. Okay. So basically, different rates will give you different assessment results. And as the rate goes higher, it's more likely that you will reject the project. So remember last time I also mentioned a terminology called minimum attractive rate of return. So 15% is our minimum attractive rate of return for the company. So when it is positive, it means that the project should give us rate of return greater than 15%. And the positive, as we increase the rate, then eventually will reach the rate of return equal to minimum effective rate of return. If we continue to increase, then the return of this project will not be able to meet our requirement of minimum return. Okay. Yeah. If you still have question, we can continue next time. Okay. Okay. So or I think during the lab session there will still be opportunity for you to discuss. We'll continue next time.
Thank you.
There's also this sign up sheet that you need to sign.